Did you know that Bette Graham created $1 million enterprise through inventing liquid paper correction fluid in 1956? Not only did her invention make it easier to correct typing errors, she was a pioneering leader incorporating things like a child care center and library into the liquid paper plant itself. In addition, she also dedicated part of her wealth to creating foundations that assist women in need. Welcome to the Scholarly Sisterhood podcast, a podcast that is building a stronger and more inclusive scholarly community for women around the world. This podcast is a platform for female scholars to share their story, and my hope is that from these stories, we can create a more supportive community for women navigating the academic world. I'm your host, Anna Blankenship, and I'm glad you're here. Today we're going to learn the story of Professor Fiona Robson, who's the head of the School of Social Sciences and Edinburgh Business School at Heriot-Watt University Dubai. So without further ado, let's go meet today's scholarly sister. Fiona, thank you so much for joining me on this podcast today about women in education leadership. We are so excited to have you on and learn more about who you are and your journey in the education sector. So welcome.
Thank you.
Can you give us a brief overview of what you are currently doing? I know that you've had numerous roles as an external examiner and a deputy director, and you've been a lecturer for a long time, and I'm pretty sure that you've lectured all over the world. So can you give us a little background and how that led you to where you are now?
Yes, so I started off as a graduate tutor 20 years ago, maybe 18 years ago. And did my PhD full-time whilst teaching full-time, and then decided I really liked the academic life because I never thought I was academic enough to do a PhD. So I did it partly to prove myself wrong. Stayed there for 10 years and then felt actually I need to break away. I need to have other experiences somewhere where I didn't study my PhD because it does change the dynamics a little bit. So I had an amazing 2 years in University of Roehampton as deputy director. Really learned a lot there and was able to use my skills around managing international partnerships. And then the dream job came up at Newcastle University, which was literally 10 minutes from where I live. So I joined there and did 2 years there. And then COVID happened. And I think COVID really made me think about everything. And I'd always wanted to move to the Middle East at some point, but thought it would probably be in 10 years' time. And then I thought, you know what, you just do not know what life is going to throw at you. So I accepted a job in Qatar, having never been there before, and had a fantastic 2 years learning about the culture, the students, really putting structure and supporting the staff. And I was really happy there. And then this job came up and I thought, I'll go for it. I don't think I'll get it, but I'll go for it. And then they gave me the job as head of school and said, and we'd like to give you a professorship. So that kind of sealed the deal that, I would become a professor. So I am head of social sciences on the business school here in Dubai, which is a really interesting job. We're a really big school. We're expanding. There's lots of work to do, but huge amount of potential as well.
Can you explain how that works a little bit more? So it's the Edinburgh Business School, but it's Heriot-Watt University, and it's in Dubai.
Yes, so we are truly a global university in that we have 5 campuses that all have equal standing. So we have Edinburgh, 2 more in Scotland, Dubai and Malaysia. And my responsibility is for the bit that's in Dubai, which is currently quite a large bit of it.
Tell me what drew you to the Middle East in the first place. You said earlier that you've always kind of been drawn there. What interests you about it?
I think just because it's culturally so different to the UK. And I supervised a doctorate a few years ago, and it was somebody who wrote about what was happening in Qatar pre-World Cup, because I hadn't really heard of Qatar before then. And so I just thought this will be an adventure. And I guess I kind of knew that if it all went wrong, I would still be employable in the UK. So the risk kind of mitigated itself. But yeah, I think I just got to a stage in my life where I thought I fancy an adventure now.
Well, it does definitely sound like an adventure and a fun one at that. So you've done all this stuff in education. Why are you in education? What keeps you there?
Um, it sounds really corny, but it is about students. It's about being able to make a difference to them. Um, there is no better feeling than meeting kind of timid, nervous students in first year and then seeing them graduate after 3 or 4 years. And, particularly those students that may not have had the easiest journey up until university. And they're all just so different. I really enjoy working with them. And I think that's a lot of the projects that I've been involved with has been about working with students to design things. So I think I'd always been interested in education, but realised that I didn't have the patience to be a school teacher. I just wouldn't have been able to do it. And I really didn't think I'd get a job in higher education. And I did. And then I got another one. So I kind of thought, oh, yeah, okay, I must be okay at this now. And no 2 days are the same. You never know really what you're going to face. Different challenges all the time, lots of staff coming and going. So I think I just like the challenge, making a difference, and yeah, just working with some great people at the same time.
I partly feel like I'm seeing myself down the road because I think that's where I am at the moment of, well, I think this higher education thing, I like learning and who knows, maybe I will challenge myself to do a PhD just to see if I can do it and I think I don't know. So we'll see, but I love that I mean, yes, it might be a little cheesy, but at the end of the day, that's what education is for, right? It's to help the students and help us learn. So I love that. As a woman in education, and not just a woman in education, but you're a leader in education, what challenges have you encountered and how have you overcome them?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one because they tend not to be kind of really obvious at points, but when somebody has a conversation with you and you think you wouldn't say that if I was a man. So, for example, people who comment on, "Oh, you're very young to be doing that role." If I was a man, they wouldn't be commenting on my age or, you've done amazing, you're strategic. And I think some of the wording that gets used around women managers, about kind of being kind and responsive, and actually for men it would be strategic, it would be agile, it would be about being assertive. I think I've always been lucky though that I've nearly always through my career worked for really strong and academically excellent women, and I think that really helped. If anything, it's probably been age more than anything else that kind of that people comment on. But I do think it's partly linked to gender. But I also know that I've got a responsibility around being a woman leader in higher education in terms of supporting other women, sharing my story. I used to do a training course for people, and I was really, really honest about my career and the bits that I think, oh, I could have done that bit better, and that shouldn't have happened. I could have done it this way upon reflection. And I do think that generally in higher education, women are much more reflective.
Mm.
And I guess the other side of it is about imposter syndrome. And it wasn't until I was teaching it quite recently. And I thought, yeah, I tick so many of those boxes. I'm really bad at saying, oh, yeah, I'm really lucky to be here. And my former boss just said, Fiona, you're not lucky. You've worked so hard to get here. Don't put it down to luck. But I think also being aware of some of the challenges women have, you kind of react in a different way. So, for example, around recruitment selection, research suggests that women deselect themselves quite a lot if there's, a small number of criteria that they don't meet, whereas men apply for roles even if there's quite a bit more that they can't do. And I nearly didn't apply for this role because I realised part of it was about managing a budget and numbers aren't my thing. And then I thought, you know what, Fiona, after if you look at everything on that job description, managing the budget is the easiest thing to learn about, get support with, get another view on. So don't not apply because you think that there's one area that you don't think you can do. But I think I have been lucky in my career that I've never felt that, I've been openly treated less favourably or anything like that. But I think part of that is because I am quite assertive and I have quite a direct communication style, so people know where they are with me. But yeah, it is interesting looking at younger academics coming in and just trying to, as I say, be really open and share some of the things that I would do differently today.
So you said earlier, what you just said, that women tend to be more reflective and that ends up being a positive thing. Tell me how that's a positive thing.
So I think for me, it helps me to understand the bits that I did well and would do it like that again, but also the bits that I would like to do differently. So I kind of see it as a long-term investment by realizing that I might need to change something now. I won't just keep repeating that pattern of behavior forever. There is a downside to it in terms of overthinking and, going home and playing every conversation in your head. And did I say the right thing or the wrong thing? And my husband always says to me, Fiona, you're not a brain surgeon. If you make a mistake at work, nobody's going to die. And that always really sticks with me that, I do my absolute best to get all the decisions right, but nobody's right all of the time. So I think part of it is about mitigating that reflection. So it's not just about kind of beating yourself up, but also about identifying the things that you do well. So I think we're good at saying what we're not good at, and we forget sometimes that there's lots of things that we're really good at doing.
So you're basically saying we need to think better of ourselves. And I guess reflect well as, yes, view the negative, but also view the positive as well. Don't just completely discredit that.
And I think if you don't reflect on negative things, it kind of lingers. So for me, I would rather just kind of think about it, write it down on a bit of paper, and then move on, so that it doesn't kind of define everything that you do in the future. And so far, I think that works quite well for me.
Would you be comfortable sharing an example of reflecting on a situation where you might have been drawn to focus on the negative, but you tried to focus on the positive as well?
Yeah, I don't have too many regrets, but I guess probably when we interview for new academics, and sometimes I go away thinking, oh, I'm not quite sure that I asked those questions in the right way, or I'm not quite sure if I sold the institution enough, or maybe I should have probed a little bit further on there. Because I think because my background is HR and I teach HR, I probably have higher expectations of myself than other people might do. And I think also, as you get older and work somewhere for longer, difficult conversations get much easier. So I think certainly in the past, if I've ever had to have a difficult conversation, so for example, telling an academic that, the feedback from the students on their course is really poor. And I think in the past, I would have worried about that the night before horrendously. Whereas now I go into the mindset of, yeah, this is the issue, but how can we work together to try and overcome the issue? So I think I'm less afraid of emotional conversations, and I think that really comes with age. But then being relatively young in terms of a head of school, but I think I've always had an old head on young shoulders.
I like that. Yeah, I think I'm really seeing my future right now because I've been told the same thing as well. So kind of going off of that, tell me some advice that you would give to some aspiring women who want to be leaders in the education field.
I think I would say be a bit brave, do things or apply for things which feel a little bit out of your comfort zone, because the worst thing that can happen is that you could go for an interview and not get the job. And that's not really the end of the world. I would say regularly get feedback from a variety of people, and almost, that mix of people who you think, yeah, they think I do a good job, but also your critics, because actually once you get good feedback from your critics, that really helps you and really kind of boosts you up. I would say that particularly in academia, women are much more likely to do a lot of the administrative roles. So, leading courses, leading programs, and often that's to the detriment of their own scholarship in terms of going to conferences, writing journal articles. So I would say really think about your career so that you don't get stuck in that position where you're an amazing program leader, but everybody else has been promoted 3 times and actually you're quite limited because you don't have a wider experience. And I think one of my strengths is being quite strategic around career. So even as a lecturer, I downloaded the senior lecturer criteria and thought, right, which ones do I meet now? And which ones do I not meet? And what can I do in order to be able to meet them so that when an opportunity comes up, I know I've got some really good examples to do that. I would say, be brave in terms of sharing your CV with colleagues to say, have I underplayed this or overplayed it? And if you were a neutral, how would you feel about the CV? And I think that a lot of women really do undersell on CVs, or just don't have the time or opportunity to really update it. And it's such an important document because there are so many people that apply for every academic job. It has to be good and it has to stand out. And for me, it would be about, don't forget the reason that you came into higher education. So for me, it wasn't about getting a management role or anything like that. It was about making a difference to students. And now I only teach 2 hours a week, but I make a difference in different ways in terms of, the way that we're looking at program portfolios or the initiatives around student experience. So whilst it not be as direct as it used to be, I still see that as being a really important part of my role.
So you keep bringing up HR. How did you get into that in your education journey? Is that what you wrote your PhD on?
Yeah, so actually all my degrees are in HR. So I did my undergrad degree in HR because I thought it sounded quite interesting, actually. And I got a job where I was kind of working part-time in HR and studying full-time, and realised that actually it was really interesting. It was about people. It was far more complex than I thought. And I got my undergraduate degree and I had about 6 months off and I thought, I still want to learn things. So I went to see my boss at the time and said, look, really sorry, but I'm going to look for another job now because I really want to do a master's. And he said, if I pay for your master's, will you stay? So I said, yeah, okay. So I did my master's and stayed. And then as an HR manager in a school, and I was really happy. It was really challenging because it was in a secondary school. So all sorts of complications that you don't get into in university around kind of child protection and all of those sorts of things. And then this job came up for a graduate tutor with the PhD being paid as part of it. And I really thought I had no chance because, I'm from a really working class background, which I'm really proud of. I went to very ordinary schools. I went to post-92 universities. Yet, no, I thought, they won't take people in like me. And I was really, really shocked when they rang to offer it to me. And I realised after a few months, it's much easier to teach HR than it is to do it.
I wonder why that. I guess because you're not actually having to deal with the hard cases. Is that why?
Partly, and in the UK, obviously, we're quite heavily unionised, and they can be really tricky meetings about really tricky subjects. And it's much easier to kind of talk about the theory and give some examples of practice rather than doing it day in, day out. And what I like about my role now, and I guess another piece of advice, sorry, just to skip back a little bit, is about what do you want to be known for, and how are you going to get yourself out there? And one of the things I do quite a lot of, Heriot-Watt are amazing in terms of getting media coverage, whether it's writing articles, going on radio shows. And I hadn't done it for ages. And then I came here and they said, would you like to do? I said, oh yeah, that would be really interesting just to do something different. And I've now written quite a lot of things for different publications. And actually, it's made me realise that bit's a really enjoyable bit of my job, which I'd kind of forgotten about because it's ages since I've done it. So I think it has to be something that you're going to get a bit of joy from, because it's really long hours sometimes. I'm normally in the office 6:30 in the morning. So if it was all the same thing, I think I'd get really bored. And I like the fact that in academia, you can identify where you think your strengths are at and, kind of build yourself around that, obviously in conjunction with line managers or whatever. But there's not that many roles where there's kind of that freedom and flexibility to say, this is the bit that I think I'm really good at doing and I'd like to do some more.
That's some really good advice and I guess kind of it's going back to what you're talking about with CVs as well, because your CV is also going to show what you're building yourself as and what, your goal is, what you're pointed towards as well.
I think one of the best pieces of advice I got about CVs was around language. Instead of just saying, responsibilities included, my CV now says achievements, and then the bullet points underneath. And actually, that's a really simple swap over, but psychologically, it kind of makes a difference because people are reading it and thinking, yeah, actually, she has achieved things. And it's a bit like, when you write when you write an essay and you're a student, it's about trying to make it as easy as possible for the people who are reading them to say, yes, she meets that criteria and that criteria. If it's all over the place and they've got 100 applications, they're not going to go through and cross-reference. So it's really about making it easy. And, if there are any career gaps, just put a couple of lines in there about what the career gap was for. So, for example, if it was maternity leave, the period of time that you weren't working, because actually that makes a difference for things like the research excellence framework, so that women aren't disadvantaged by having a period of time. And I think a lot of women don't do that because they think that it might be perceived as a negative. But actually, higher education is really moving forwards through things like Athena Swan and that whole concept of diversity. And I just think that is so commonplace now for people to be much more positive and to just not look at information like that, for it to be about what's this person achieved, how well would they fit into this organisation. And I guess another important piece of advice would be about really researching the organisation that you work for. So really trying to find out about the culture of the organisation, doing lots of background research. It's amazing how many people I interview that know virtually nothing about this university, and it really frustrates me when they do that, because I see it as an investment, and personally I would never apply for a job that I wouldn't accept if it was offered. So I think really make sure that it's the type of institution. So if somebody wants to be a 4-star researcher, a post 92 might not be the best environment. If it's a university where they don't quite do your subject, but they might do something very similar, again, that might not help you in terms of developing your expertise in your area. So I see selection as very much a two-way about, do they want me, but also, is this the right type of organisation for me to go to?
Right. It's a two-way street. Because they're going to have to work with you and you're going to have to work with them.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Would you be comfortable sharing what it's like to be in education leadership coming from a working class background?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I don't think I've ever felt particularly disadvantaged in my leadership journey. I've definitely had people comment on my accent before. So I'm from the north of England, from Newcastle. And so I have had comments about my accent. But I think that one of the good things in academia is that people are now much better at identifying you by what you've achieved rather than where you come from. And actually, in some institutions, so when I worked at the University of Roehampton, we had a lot of students from statistically the most deprived areas of London. And I think that it really resonated with them to be taught by somebody actually whose background wasn't massively dissimilar to theirs. And so that they, could really think about what their potential might be. I was really fortunate that my parents always supported me and encouraged me to do things. I think certainly though, when I applied to work in a Russell Group university, that's probably the one time where I felt not just upbringing, but the fact that I had got my PhD from a post 92 university was definitely a topic of conversation. And that hadn't been the case in any of the universities that I'd worked at. But yeah, I would like to think that once people work with me, then that's just becomes so irrelevant. It's about, how you support people, how you look after them, etc.
Right. And at the end of the day, like you said in the beginning, it's about the students. So, it doesn't really matter where you're from as long as you can have that collaboration and educating students.
Yeah.
Do you remember, are there any students that stand out to you as, wow, I really felt like I made a difference in their life?
Yeah, there is. I think in my first role at Northumbria, I'm still in touch actually with some of the students that I taught first, and it's really nice because they comment on my LinkedIn posts now. So yeah, there's probably 3 or 4 from that first cohort. And then if I think about every university, I probably could narrow it down to students who either, at the beginning weren't that bothered about studying or weren't achieving that well. And then through kind of being supportive to them and really trying to motivate them, they achieve more. I can think of one amazing second year student who now has his own organisation. When I first met him, I was thinking, are you going to pass this course? Because I don't think you've done any reading. And that just makes me really proud. And I think that students sometimes don't recognise how much they've learned and been supported until they leave. And I keep every single thank you card because, that is what's important to me. All of my doctoral students, I'm still in regular contact with. And I think if I ever got to the point where that wasn't important, that would be the time for me to get a job somewhere else.
Oh, that's lovely. I love that you have that connection with your students from, even all the way back. I love that. So what legacy do you hope to leave behind as a woman leader in education?
I would hope that there is a good talent pipeline. So one of the things I really like about this university is I have many more women academics than men that I've inherited. There are more women here who've been promoted. So I think that my legacy is around particularly supporting early career academics to, talk to them about their journey. And I'm really honest and I share my CV with them and say, look, this is what I did. This is the bit I like. This is the bit that I didn't like. and give them opportunities to lead things, whether it's a project or a competition, but giving them something so that when they do want to be promoted, they've got some of that experience. And I think, I think that would be the main thing. One of the best things that I did with 2 colleagues in Qatar was a program called For Women by Women. And it was all about women's career development, overcoming the imposter syndrome, about being assertive, etc. And they were literally some of the best hours I've ever had in my career. That, the feedback at the end from some of the women about what they were going to do different in their organisation. Subsequently, we had organisations coming back to us to say, can you come and deliver it in our specific company? So I think anything that gives women confidence is really important. And I was talking to a friend the other day who's applying for a job, and I said, you have to ask the question, which I always ask if I get offered a job, which is, am I getting paid the same as any men at the same grade in this organisation? Because actually that's really important to me. So I think, just being able to sort of share advice, give people time so that if they want to practice something with you, they can, and having an atmosphere where if they make a mistake, it's not the end of the world, and we can pick it up, we can learn from it, we can move on, and that's it. And I think really interesting feedback I had last week was about being really calm. And I hadn't really thought about that. And then I thought, that is probably something which makes me so different to 18 years ago when I started, that now, I do have that sense of calmness. And even if something's upsetting or made me a bit cross, I can deal with it in a really different way. And I think those sorts of skills. So in a few weeks' time, I'm going to be doing some confidence building sessions for our students here in Dubai. And I really hope that by the end of it, they will feel more empowered, that they won't deselect themselves from things, that they will be, really positive about having a voice, even in a room where there's lots of other voices going on. And that would make me really happy, I think.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great legacy to have. And again, at the end of the day, it goes back to helping students and how can we best help them learn and to, I guess, make their own way in the world.
And sometimes it's about letting them know about the opportunities that are available. So, it doesn't have to be rocket science a lot of the time, but exposing them to things they just didn't know exist, particularly in this part of the world where there are some, quite different careers and roles. So I think we have that responsibility that no matter which route a student wants to go down, whether it's further education, whether it's, working on a graduate scheme, setting up a business, that they all feel supported, and we really try and help them with whichever track that they want to follow.
I love that. Well, my last question for you is, who do you know that I should interview next?
Oh, good question. Yeah, I could give you a couple of names. So Dr. Nadia Dagama, whose details I can send you, who I worked with in Qatar. And it's not that common when you meet somebody in an interview for the first time and think, wow, they're going to be absolutely amazing here. They're going to be a breath of fresh air. And I had that feeling with Nadia, and she is just absolutely amazing. And manages to do research on top of everything else, which I don't manage to do anymore. So I think she'd be somebody really good who I could connect you with, who's got a good story as well.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I'm excited to meet her and learn more about her journey as well. Well, Fiona, thank you so much for agreeing to do this interview. I absolutely love just to learn more about your journey in the education sector. And I wish you the best in helping students and in your role at the Edinburgh Business School at the Heriot-Watt University in Dubai.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Fiona Robson's episode of the Scholarly Sisterhood. Check out the episode description to learn more about Fiona and her work. This episode was researched and hosted by Anna Blankenship. And as always, we want to thank our editor, Lizzie Walker, and staff writer, Emily Sanders. Hey, can you do me a favor? Can you share this episode of the Scholarly Sisterhood with a woman in academia you know? Subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode filled with stories, insights, and expertise from remarkable female scholars from around the world. After speaking with Fiona and learning that men often apply for roles even when they don't meet all the criteria, I feel more encouraged as a woman to go after the jobs, internships, and programs I want, even if I don't check every box. Thank you, Fiona, for sharing your story with us.